Hi, welcome to today's conversation, the power of intermission. Intermission is something that we all have the privilege and we also have the choice of taking a break from the busy highways of life, hitting pause on purpose. So, I want to talk to you today about giving yourself permission to press pause. And so, as we go through today's conversation, the power of intermission, I want you to be intentionally present for yourself. I want you to give yourself permission to press pause. In a culture that constantly puts pressure on us to be performance driven, I want you to be purpose. So let's just spend this time together talking about the power of intermission. Today, we're talking about giving yourself permission to press pause. Pause on the hustles and bustles of life. Pause on everything that is demanding your full attention and giving that attention to yourself, giving yourself some soul care. You deserve a break. We always say sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed, I need a break. Well, guess what? No one is going to give you that break. You and I have to take responsibilities for the breakaways that we're going to need in order for us to remain on track and on purpose. Charles Spurgeon says, however great may be the work for which we are responsible, we will always do well if we pause to spend time in a sacred praise. And I like to add to that, if we pause to spend time in a sacred place, in the place in which we can have greater soul care, that we can pay more attention to who we are, where we've been, and where we think that God is leading us. So I want to ask you a few questions. When was the last time that you hit pause on purpose? When was the last time that you intentionally says, okay, I am going to just be still in the moment and kind of see where I'm at? When was the last time you stepped away from the demands of life and demanded that life step away from you? Sometimes we have to be the initiator of taking that intermission, of putting the demands of life on hold, because life is a continuous cycle that never stops. And so if we don't take responsibility for taking that pause and taking that pause on purpose, then we will just continue to be in that endless cycle of allowing life to demand so much of us versus us taking a break from the demands of life. So, can I give you some breaking news today? When you make a choice to take that breakaway, to do that intermission for yourself, the people, the places will be just fine. When you decide to take that intermission, the people and the places can wait on you to just be refreshed, to reset, to re engage, and for you to just recharge, to come back more spirit led with more of a strategic purpose and remain stronger to the finish line. So, part of intermission is looking at work life balance. Alan Fadlin says, good work grows out of good rest. We all have to take that mental, physical, emotional, and even spiritual rest so that we can have good work life balance. There's also a quote that says, don't underestimate the power of resting. It builds you back unlike anything. So we don't need to rush the process. Purpose unveils itself in the process. So, one of the things that I want to encourage you or challenge you on, sometimes we're trying to hurry through the process, that we think that if we don't get it done today, this week, this month, this year, then maybe we should not have started at all. But God has a perfect plan, a purpose, and a provision for you to do that which He has purposed. We just need to cooperate with His plan. And His plan involves us having an intermission. So when I was thinking about this whole thing about intermission, I was looking at some research findings related to whether you call it taking an intermission, whether you call it taking a respite, whether you call it retreating, a sabbatical, whatever it is that you call it, the most important part of it is not what you label it, but the life-changing process that you allow to occur by stepping away from the demands of life. So the research shows that we all need to take a break and decompress so that we can be our best at work, at home, and at life. We've got to decompress. We got to let some of the air out sometimes. In a University of Illinois study, it says taking a break once every hour is optimal for all of us. And I know in your daily schedule, you may say, I can't take a break every hour. Mentally, you can, even if it's just for a few seconds or a few minutes. On the hour, you can take a break. You can shift your eyes away from your computer screen. You can stand up and stretch. You can do simple little things. Stop thinking about the problem for a second, just so that you can recharge and rebuild and rebound. Supports also taking a break, supports recovery from stress, which improves your performance. Because if you aren't stressed out, then your performance can be more purpose driven, and your performance can be part of the process for which you go from start to finish. I found something called the 52-17 rule. And this is where 52 minutes of focused working is followed by 17 minutes of complete resting and recharging. Now, when I say rest, that doesn't necessarily mean you're somewhere, taking a nap or laid back, in a recliner. It may be that for you, but it's shifting gears from what you've been focusing on so much, that you've been being so intense about, and decompressing. It's a time for you to unwind and to recharge, because this is what prevents burnout. It reduces stress. It boosts your motivation and your creativity, because you already know that when you're not tired and fatigued mentally, then your creativity gains a whole new life. Personal growth without outside judgment and distractions. This is your sacred space to break away from all the demands of life so you can experience growth at your pace without the fear of being judged, without the fear of distractions and disruptions, because no one gets to tell you the place or the timing of when you decide to take that personal intermission. So let's look at intermission. What is it? What is this all about? Most of us think about an intermission when we go to performing arts. Well, the original meaning of intermission was any type of temporary pause that is taken. But in the 1850s, it was used to describe an interval between parts of a theatrical performance. But when we look at the Latin root of the word intermission, it means a breaking off or an interruption. And that's what I want to encourage you today. Sometimes we have to just break off from the daily routines. We have to interrupt that which has been interrupting us, because we know that every day we face a lot of interruptions. And sometimes you just need to interrupt the interruption. In the fine arts world, it's usually a period of 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes it's 20 to 30 minutes. It's a time that allows the performers and the audience to rest. So why is intermission so important? Let's think about it for the performers, but because we all are living out our life purpose. So in a sense, we are performing. We're not necessarily putting on an act, but we're doing the work that we've been purposed to do. So we are performing the good work that God has purposed for us to do beforehand. So doing an intermission in the performing arts The performers are hidden from view. We don't get to see what's going on behind the curtain. We don't see them taking that time to take those deep breaths, to rebound, to prepare for the finale, for the second half. We don't get to see them when they are changing costumes. We don't get to see that. And that's for a purpose, because they're not there to show you the totality from start to finish. They're there for you to be able to take a engagement when they're at their best. And so when you think about, the performance doing their intermission, there's a time of recovery for the finale, so that they can, even if they thought that you had high expectations for them when you invested your time to engage with them, their commitment is to exceed those expectations. Not that they did a bad job in the first act, but they are determined to even exceed your expectations even the more, because they're creating a memorable experience from start to finish. And that is what God offers us. He offers us the opportunity to be hidden from the view of the world, from the demands and the interruptions, for us to take time to recharge, to change costumes, to change, and it may not, I'm not talking about like clothing or anything, but to change our armor, how we show back up. What is the armor that we need to change guards with when we show up in the second act of our daily demands on our lives? The intermission also builds anticipation for what's to come in the acts to follow. Because think about this, when you're in the audience and you've had a very good first act, yes, you're taking that time as downtime, but you are also in expectation of, I wonder what the finale is going to be like. But it also allows you, as someone who's watching, to pause your psychological and your physical engagement with the performance, particularly if it's a very highly engaging performance, because your mind, your body, your spirit, and soul is probably on an elevated and a heightened light of excitement and engagement. So this gives you time to kind of step back, to calm down, to take your deep breaths, and to prepare for the finale. You get a chance to refresh your mental faculties that you may have actually suspended when you were so intently focused on the performance. You may have forgotten about everything around you, the person sitting next to you, in front of you, or behind you. That is what we have to do during intermission. It's okay to forget. It's okay to step away from everything that's around you. Because in the second act, the performers are purpose to give even more so that you can receive more. It's the finale of why they came, why they're doing what they're doing. And so it is with you in living out your life purpose. You, during this time of breaking away, you get to receive more from God so that you can give more. You get to live out the finale of your purpose on purpose. So let's just take a break. We are nearing the end of the year, and we are, by the grace of God, preparing to launch into a new year. But before we can show up in the next act of our new year, let's just take this time in the remainder of this year to just kind of take a break. Let our soul breathe. Let your soul take a deep breath, a breath of fresh air. There are some quotes that I found about taking a break. And the first one is, taking a break can lead to breakthrough. How many times have you been working on a problem, trying to figure something out? You're getting frustrated, and there just seems to be no end in sight, and you can't figure it out. What usually was easy for you has become very hard. During these breakaway times from the demands of life, we can experience some of the greatest breakthroughs because our head becomes clearer. There's less crowdedness. And so we can have those breakthroughs. We can have fresh ideas. We can be infused with new energies. So I want to encourage you today to do something nice for yourself. Find some quiet, sit in stillness, and just breathe. Put your problems on pause because you deserve a break. Let's loosen up some time and take a break just to recalibrate our lives. Remember your why. And if what you're doing is not leading you to your why, then let's recalibrate. Now and then, it's good to pause in our pursuit of happiness and just be happy. Let's just be happy. Let's not always be in this rat race for pursuing things that we think are going to bring us joy and happiness and peace and longevity. Let's try to figure out how to be happy in the moment, for the moment, and then let the next moment and the next moment and the next moment unveil itself. So take the you owe it to yourself break today and the days forward as you are graced with the gift of living purposeful, living empowered on purpose for the remainder of this year, and by the gift and the grace of God, being in expectancy of embracing the new year. You know, my personal intermission right now was launched by walking through the bookstore one day. I was looking for a book for a book club that I was doing, and I was looking for a copy of the book for a friend. Well, as I'm roaming through the books, I found a book that was entitled A Year of Slowing Down, Daily Devotions for Unhurried Living. And I decided that I wasn't going to wait for January 1 to start this just because it's 365 days. It's like this God whisper, like, today is the day to start. So when I started the devotion, A Year of Slowing Down, Daily Devotions for Unhurried Living by Alan Fadling, and it's a phenomenal, a brief 3 to 5 minutes time of just looking at some life principles of what it means about unhurried living, reconnecting with your soul care, reconnecting with God, reconnecting with purpose. So I want to encourage you that if you've never heard of this unheard daily devotions for unheard living by Alan Fadlin, to consider investing in it. And I can tell you that it will be worth your investment. So when things are not happening as planned, just stop worrying and take an unplanned break to regain yourself. You're in charge of your breaks. You get to give yourself a break. You get to give yourself a break. Philippians 1:6 tells us, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you, he will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. So give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to take that break, because you can be confident that you're making the decision to do that breakaway, to hit pause, to give yourself some soul care. It is not going to alter God's purpose. It's not going to alter his timing. It's not going to alter his authority and capacity to finish the work that he started in you. Now, you get to say no to what he has purpose, but if you give yourself permission to take the breakaways, then you won't be as fatigued. You won't be as overwhelmed and stressed out and burnt out and tempted to say no to something because you think that you can't finish it. You're not finishing it in the first place. It's God working in and through you that is the author and the finisher of our faith, and helping you to put your faith in action. So your personal intermission is a choice. God gives it to you as a choice. Even when God created the world, he worked for 6 days, and on the seventh day, he rested, and he established it as a Sabbath. So maybe you can't envision like a daily personal intermission. It's your intermission. You get to design it however you want to, whatever fits your life, whatever fits your soul care. But it's a choice that you have to make consistently, continually, and courageously, because disruptions are not going to stop. Life demands are not going to bow down to your commitment to take a personal intermission. Life is going to keep coming at you. It's going to keep hitting you, and it may hit you hard. It may be little subtle taps, but then again, there are times when it's going to be a hard hit. But if you would just consistently, continually, and courageously decide that I am going to press pause on a purpose so that I can live purpose in the second act. A great friend of mine, Lori Volber, says every challenge is an opportunity, and every opportunity is a choice. So that's why I keep saying you're taking advantage of the power of an intermission for your soul care. It's always going to be a choice, but it's going to give you the opportunity and even more possibilities for how you finish purpose. So, an intentional pause and reset can lead you to a new route, to start to see new options and new possibilities, things that you were not able to see when you were tired and burned out and stressed and felt like, the world was coming to an end. So, just try pausing for 3 to 5 minutes on the hour, every hour. Start small. Maybe you're saying, Sheila, that is not possible. I didn't say that you get to go lie in a recliner or take a nap or just step away physically, but mentally and soulfully, you get to take that pause. Notice what happens to your heart, to your mind, your thoughts, how they can be refreshed, how they can be renewed, how you gain a renewed sense of purpose during this pause. So give yourself the permission, the gift of unhurried living. This devotional that I'm reading about unhurried living, it is such a gift. I'm so grateful that the author exercised his gift of intermission just to write the devotional so that it could be a blessing to myself and to others. So, what do you do during these intermissions? What do you do when you are stepping back from the demands of life? I think having some what I call intermission self talk, some soul care conversations are so important because sometimes we don't do well with just silence. Silence sometimes can be the biggest distraction for us because sometimes we're trying to learn how to quiet the inner voices. So let's talk about some soul care conversations that you can have during this intermission. So, some questions for you to consider. Am I living a life that is authentic to me? Am I living someone else's expectations of me? What practical steps can I begin manifesting more abundance of love, of joy, and peace in my present moment? What unhelpful stories from the past can be rewritten so that they can empower rather than disempower? I think this is a big one. There are things that have been unhelpful in the past, unhelpful stories that we can rewrite during this time of soul care intermission so that we can be empowered and stop being disempowered. Am I willing to take risk and do something different to achieve my desired results? What impact do I want to make in this world? What have I been doing? What do I want to do differently? Am I living in alignment with my highest values and priorities? If not, what needs to change? Am I making time each day for self care and personal recharging? Taking that intermission, taking that breakaway really pays off. God has purposed this breakaway to have a payoff plan. Think about the performers, that intermission gives them even that time to have a greater stamina to come back and have this great finale, the second act that brings it all together. So it pays off by giving us an opportunity to refresh, to reset, to re-engage, and to recover. Luke 5:5-6 says, and I think this was Peter talking, they were out fishing and they had came in from a day's work and they didn't have anything to show for the work that they had done. He says, we worked hard all night to the point of exhaustion, and we caught nothing in our nets. But at your word, I will do as you say, lower the nets again. And when they had done this, they caught a great number of fish. Their nets were at a point of breaking. I want you to get this. They were doing the work and they were working hard. They were putting in the time, just like you're doing. You're putting in the work to live purpose. You're living out what you feel like you've been called to do, to the point of exhaustion sometimes. But sometimes we are catching nothing. You don't see the reward for your labor. And there are times that there isn't a reward, but it doesn't look like what we want it to look like. So Jesus is telling them that I'm going to reroute you. I'm going to reroute your expectations. What he purposed for them to do did not change, but the way in which they were going to come about living out purpose, there was a new way of doing it. So Peter is saying, okay, what we're doing isn't working. But since you're telling us to toss the net to the other side and to toss it deeper, sometimes we got to go deeper. Sometimes we got to change locations. Sometimes we do have to go to the other side of what we're struggling with what the problem is, with what seems to have no solution whatsoever. We got to do the new thing. We got to say yes to the new thing that God is doing. And when they did that, they caught a great number of fish. And their nets were so full that they almost broke. They did their work without immediate results. But when Jesus stepped in with a word, with an instruction, it led to a greater plan, a process, and a provision. And God promises that when we obey his instructions, even when it doesn't seem to make sense, even when we think that our way is the best way, God steps in and says, I want you to do it my way, according to my plan, my process, and I will guarantee the provision. Jesus modeled the power of intermission in so many different ways. He often stepped away from the crowd to pray, to commune, to emerge in his Father's purpose. It gave him an opportunity to be refreshed, to be renewed, and to re-engage. Sometimes our intermission is not necessarily a place of isolation. Sometimes Jesus was able to just break away totally. There are other times when he took people with him. He just stepped a short distance away. So sometimes intermission is not necessarily isolation. Again, it's about hitting that pause in your soul, regardless of where you find yourself. So I want to talk to you about some tips for creating some personal intermission for your soul care. First and foremost, you've done complex and hard enough. Keep it simple, self-defined, and sacred. There are no rules that you need to set up for taking that intermission for soul care. So keep it simple. Create flexible boundaries for your personal breaks. Don't just be set into a particular routine that you have to do it at a certain time, at a certain day, in a certain place. Just be flexible. Be open to all of the possibilities that are there for you to take your personal breaks. Be aware of your tendencies to make exceptions. We all do this. We get this phone call, we get this text, we get this email, and we know that, okay, this is my personal space and time, but this person must need me, or they wouldn't have texted, they wouldn't have called, they wouldn't have sent the email. Be aware of your tendencies to start making exceptions. We will have emergencies. We will have, the phone call or the text that we might have to answer. But even in that moment, you can hit pause, handle what you got to handle, and then go back. Try something totally new as you're building up your capacity for good soul care. Try some new things sometimes. Take time to breathe. Just take some deep breaths. You would be surprised how taking 3 to 7 deep breaths makes such a big difference physically, mentally, psychologically, and spiritually. Don't do it all at once. Don't necessarily make a public announcement about it. Just let that be your sacred space. So I want to offer you 5 P's of personal intermission success in progress. What does it look like? And our goal here is to finish purpose. So we're finishing strong in progress. Not necessarily, I know a lot of people say, finish strong. I want to finish purpose because in finishing purpose day to day, I don't always feel strong. I don't. But you know what? My checklist is, did I finish purpose? So here are 5 personal intermission tips or strategies. One is to be present for you. Again, resist the temptation to allow exceptions for interruptions. Practice patience with the process. If you haven't been doing intermissions and taking those sacred soul care breaks, it may take you a while to feel comfortable, to feel like, yes, I am being fruitful. I've stopped focusing on being productive. I'm trying to be fruitful because the word tells us about fruitfulness. The word does not speak against productivity, but I just like the word fruitfulness because I like to think of the harvest. Shift your perspective from I owe them to I owe me. You owe yourself this. You owe yourself this. And if you keep the mentality that you owe them, whoever them is, you will be less inclined to take that intermission for your soul care. Be persistent in making the time and be purposefully playful. The world isn't really waiting on you anyway. The world continues to go round and round and round. So you need to hit restart as often as you need to. And when you're doing this, I want you not think about being perfect, but being intentionally perfect. So when you think about being playful, doing this intermission, laugh out loud. Laugh out loud. When you find yourself in a quiet place in the park where no one's going to maybe hear the laughter and question or look at you kind of funny, practice hearing your own laughter. Mary Ann Hersey says it this way: live your intention, walk to the edge, listen hard, practice wellness, play with abandon, laugh, choose no regrets, do what you love, live as if this is all there is. It's about giving yourself permission to take the break that you deserve. I want to really encourage you as you are preparing for the grace gifts of every day that God has purposed for you in this remaining year, as you're preparing in expectations of the grace gifts for what God has purposed you for the new year. This is a time for you to just take some deep breaths, focus on being present for yourself, to do the soul care thing. I am very, I've just been being very blessed, just purposefully going through this devotion on unhurried living and what that means for me. I've taken some things off of my to-do list for the remainder of the year. So next week we're going to have a very special guest, and we're going to talk about pressing pause on purpose. So I have a special guest, Marjorie Walker, and she's the CEO on a Free to Leap LLC. So she's a motivational speaker, she's a life coach, and we're going to just dig a little deeper in this conversation about pressing pause on purpose. And then I am going to exercise my choice to take an intermission. And I don't know what that's going to look like. It'll play out how it plays out. But just remember that here at Light Purpose by Design, our mission is always to inspire you, to engage you, and to empower you so that you can discover your true purpose by God's design. And we want you to do that with clarity, with confidence, and a commitment to live empowered on purpose. And part of that living empowered on purpose is exercising your right to take the intermission, to exercise the soul care, so that your second act of living purpose can far exceed the first act. There's nothing wrong with the first act, but let the second act of each new day find yourself in a place of purpose. Thank you so much for your joining us for 2023. And I look forward to engaging with you as we move forward to live empowered on purpose. Be blessed and have a wonderful take the break that you so richly deserve day.